Welcome to Sabes Que. Did you know I'm your host, Jesse Bermudez? My co-host, Pablo Batista, is in New York finishing up some recordings. He'll be back with me next week. My guest today is a trombonist, composer, arranger, leader of the Mighty Pirate Troubadours, Grammy nominee, winner of the Masters Award from the National Endowment for the Arts, and his credits go on and on. He has performed with the best. He's in the movies Mo Better Blues and the Mambo Kings, amongst many other accolades. So, Sabes Que welcomes to our show, Papo Vazquez. All right.
How you doing, Jesse?
All right, Papo. Listen, I want to thank you for agreeing to do this interview. It's exciting for me because to have somebody like you on the show is just great. So, Papa, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take you all the way back to where you were born and your schooling. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Well, I was born in North Philadelphia, 21st and Green, 1958. And at an early age, I think they took me, we moved to Puerto Rico, and we were there for about 4 or 5 years, 6, 7 years, I think, 4, 5, 6 years. And we returned back to Philadelphia when I when I was in elementary school. So yes, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Puerto Rico, and back to Philadelphia.
Fantastic. And, what inspired you to get involved in the music as a young man?
Well, the back. I mean, not back then. I mean, music is always is a major thing in our culture. But in my house, in my household, my my father and my grandfather, they were all trovadores, troubadours. They used to play música jíbara. My uncle, he played guitar, and on my father's side, it was a large family, so I had a lot of aunts and uncles, and they were all, you know, they were different generations of music. And my father was like I said, troubadour. And my mother used to sing. So music was always, and live music, because I remember them, my father, those guys, they would rehearsing in my house for parrandas, Christmas caroling, Puerto Rican style, throughout the year. So in my living room, every now and then they would have a rehearsals, and I would sit and watch them rehearse. So I guess I would say that was the beginning of my influence, or my my introduction to live music, because there's a difference between listening to a record and watching it on TV, and watching it live is a whole different thing.
Yeah, well, Pablo, I was trying to think about, the fact that how did you get tied into the trombone? Because I know most of the Christmas celebrations are guitar and percussion and this and that. How did you wind up with that instrument?
Well, like I said before, my father's family, it was, I had aunts and uncles that were closer to my age, and then closer to my dad's age, and the younger they got, the younger or the music would just change. So the older, my older aunts and uncles, they would play like música jíbara, the mountain music of Puerto Rico, and and the younger my aunts and uncles would get, the music would change. So it's like I'm being exposed to, you know uh, our traditional Jibaro music from the mountains, or our traditional Puerto Rican culture, and then the younger aunts and uncles would get, they were listening to the popular dance music back then, which was Willie Colon, Mon Rivera, Hector, the whole Fania thing, Uh, and then my younger uncles, they were listening to James Brown and like that. Now, to answer your question, uh, back when I'm talking about the early '70s in Philadelphia, they used to have these church dances. They used to have these church dances, right? And I don't remember how because I'm talking about 1973, so I was a young kid, but I snuck into to or maybe I guess I was allowed to go in because it was a church dance, so maybe there was no alcohol, but I'm not sure. The thing is that I'm at this church dance, and the church dance was at St. Edward's in North Philly, and the band that was playing was Willie Colon live, So with Willie Colon, with Hector Lavoe, and the original Willie Colon band. That's what I always credit Willie Colon with influencing me to become a trombone player. And I have buddies there was a friend of mine, Philip and Sammy Torres. They were also messing around with the trombone, and Philip sold me a trombone for $5, and then we started competing with each other. No, I'm gonna play better than you, whatever. The thing is that was the beginning of me playing trombone. But also I got to credit the school programs. Back then in Philadelphia, the elementary school that I went to was Thomas Potter. Thomas Potter in North Philly. It used to be on I think 8th and Clearfield, if I'm not mistaken. Then I moved to 6th and Clearfield. But that's the elementary school that I went to, and I remember I used to get the trombone lessons there from a violin player. His name was the name of the teacher was Mr. Stefano. Mr. Stefano, yeah, Mr. Stefano. He used to give me trombone lessons in elementary school, and then from there, I from Thomas Potter, I went to Stetson Junior High. And I was also part of they had a music program there. I was part of, and I was then by the time I get to junior high, then they had a band. Then I was part of the band, and from there I was able to audition to Massbaum Technical High School. So from an early age, I was getting a good I was getting I was being musically educated. By the time I got to Massbaum Technical High School, that was Mr. Rosenberg. I used to have I auditioned for that high school, which is a technical high school. I don't know if they still have a music program nowadays. I'm not sure, but I auditioned, and they let me into that school. They let me into and matter of fact, years later, I found out that Lee Morgan went to Massbaum Technical High School. We graduated from Massbaum Technical High School, but those music programs they prepare me. I was I really have to give credit to those programs in high school back when I grew up, because I used to have music theory and then math and history in the morning, and then from 1 to 3 we used to have band every day. So that actually prepared me to play with the local salsa bands. Because one day my uncle Dagoberto, who used to play guitar, and he's played one of the local bands. I think it was not that I think he's played with Joe Barreto and La Cubane, and the trumpet player. Somehow they were missing a trumpet player. He didn't make it to the gig, and he told the leader of the band, "Yeah, my nephew plays trombone." I'm like, what, 13, 14 years old? Yeah, he plays trombone. He knows how to read. But I think I was already in high school. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The thing is that he sent the timbalero to my house and to ask my father permission if I could go to the gig to cover for the trumpet player. They needed a horn player, and when I got there, the leader asked me, "Well, you know how to read?" I said, "Yeah." I don't know if I knew how to read or not. I know that I got the gig, and matter of fact, that gig paid me like $5. And the only reason that my father let me go to that gig was because my uncle was in the band, you know, and that's where I actually got to meet Mr. Jimmy Purvis, trumpet player, who introduced me to Black American music, jazz.
Fantastic. Wow. What an experience, Papo. Now, you're going through all of this in Philadelphia, the schools and the teachers and the small gigs that you were able to pick up. But now, you know, uh, can you talk a little bit about the artists and opportunities that you came across when you left Philadelphia as a young man to New York City?
Well, you know, it all goes hand in hand. You know, it's like one thing led to the other. You know, uh, uh, being starting a musical education at an early age in elementary school, going to junior high school. By the time I got to high school, I was playing in the jazz band, and I was actually with one of the soloists. Like, you know, like I knew what I was doing. You know, but I mean, God bless Mr. Rosenberg. I was, uh, by that time, I think we're talking about 1973, 74. I'm already playing with the local Latin bands. And back then, and I remember playing with Joe Barreto, and then from there I jumped. I went to Gilberto something, man. I forgot his name. Gilberto some. He had an orchestra, and from there I went. I joined Rafi Hernandez and La Contraria.
Contraria, yeah.
It was at one time it was Los Galanes, and then it became La Contraria, you know. And I was also part of La Orquesta La Paz too. But to me, before, you know, the band that I aspired to play with back then was Rafi Hernandez y La Contraria, because he had, like, you know, the players that he had were like top notch, and the players that he had were like Earl Garner. Earl Garner nowadays, he's the lead player for the Saturday Night Live band. He's been there for many years, so I know Earl for years. Yeah.
Ralphie had a tremendous contribution to Latin music here in the city of Philadelphia, and also in respect to the development of AMLA, the Asociación de Músicos Latinoamericanos. If it wasn't for Ralphie, it probably wouldn't even exist.
Right. And in that band, it was also Papo Rodriguez was in that band. I mean, to be part of that band, you was being part of. You was being invited to be part of like a real, like, hot, tough. These guys are like these are the killer players. You know, the killer players from Philly was Peachy, man, Nelson Montalvo on bass. He had a fantastic band, man.
Yeah. So listen.
So anyway, so going back to the question,
right.
So those bands, or that band, we used to alternate with the bands from New York, right?
Right.
So we were open. We were the openers. You know, we would play at the man. What was the name of that? It was a lot of the Exodus and the hotels. It was
Philadelphia Hotel.
The Philadelphia Hotel, right? Exactly. We used to open up for Palmieri, for Larry Harlow, for all these bands from New York, and that's how I got to meet all the players from New York, and that's how I was able to get an invitation to come to New York and play with Chocolate Armenteros.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That must have been exciting, right? Not only playing with him, but what kind of conversations you had with him in respect to the music?
Oh, with Chocolate?
Yeah.
Actually, the Chocolate he didn't audition me. Who actually auditioned me for that gig was Oscar Hernandez. To this day, I always joke around with Oscar. I said, "Yeah, you know, when you auditioned me, man, I already had made my mind. I was gonna get you, sucker." but I'm extremely grateful for all, you know, for Oscar, and you know, auditioning me. I guess he saw that I knew what I was doing, and he recommended me. Him and Gilbert Colon and Danny Rosado, they recommended me to Chocolate, and then from Chocolate, See, because Chocolates, he wasn't playing a lot. The guys, the bands that were real hot were like Hector Lavoe and Larry Harlow and Willie Colon, those guys, and Ray Rivero. Those are the bands that were really playing a lot. And Reynaldo Jorge recommended me to. He was leaving Larry Harlow's band, and he recommended me for that gig with Larry Harlow. That's how I was able to. The first time I ever left the country, I traveled out of the United States to Venezuela. I was with Larry Harlow, Junior Gonzalez, back in 1975.
Boy, as a young man, you had an exciting career, I would assume, right? In the sense of now moving into what you wanted to do and taking it to another level.
Well, I was actually very fortunate because, I also had an aunt and a political and an uncle that lived in New York, my titi Yeya. So I was able to, like, because that would have been difficult for me to come to New York and not have a place to stay, So they provided for me at least a platform that I could to jump from. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they used to live on 95th and First Avenue, and the Corso used to be on 86 and Lexington. So I remember when I first came to New York, so I guess the first gigs that I did were the first gigs were with Chocolate, but those gigs were kind of tough because I was still in high school. So I would take the Amtrak to New York, right? I think it was like $12 back then, and to do the gig, and then after the gig at like around 3:00 or whatever time it was, I would go back to 34th Street and take the Amtrak to go to high school. I would go straight from the train station to school. Wow. But that didn't last too long. I wasn't able to. So I asked my mom, if she could. I was already in. I think I was in 11th grade. And I think all my shenanigans with the music kind of like, I slacked off on high school, even though, thank the Lord, that later I was able to get my high school diploma and I went to City College and stuff here in New York. But so that's when I decided that I had, that I needed a different plan if I wanted to move to New York, if I wanted to come to New York and play with the guys in New York. So that's when I asked my titi Yaya if I could stay with them, and then I made it a little more permanent,
Well, what I want you to talk a little bit about is that how early in your career did you get or fall in love with jazz?
Well, like I said before, that from an early age, man, I was around 15 or 14 years old, 16 around there. When the first band that I played with, it was with Joe Barreto. That's when I met. So I would say around 14 years old. That's when I met Jimmy Purvis, who was one of the trumpet players in that band, and we became friends. He actually was the first adult friend that I ever had. He was like a mentor of mine, And my parents, they would allow me to go to his house to take lessons and he would just sit. I remember sitting down, and he would play, man, Art Blakey, the John Coltrane, Miles Davis, the whole thing. He would just play Clifford Brown, all these records for me. And I was like, wow. And he actually was the one that gifted me my first jazz records. My first jazz record that I owned was J.J. Johnson Blue Trombone and John Coltrane Live at the Village Vanguard.
Wow.
So when he gave me the J.J. Johnson record, See, throughout all this thing, my father was also a bodeguero. So that said, my father used to own the bodega, and then across the street from the bodega we used to own a house that also had like a front, it was like a storefront, but he didn't use it as a storefront. He converted that into a record shop pool room, and guess who used to run it?
You?
I used to, well, right, and so I used to sell the records and watch the whatever the pool. But what I used to do, I used to I used to open the records and listen to them, and if I liked them, I would take them and put them underneath my bed. And the ones that I didn't like, I would put tape back. I would tape them back and put them on the bin. I guess that's why that business did his record shop didn't last too long.
I had to
But
close down, right?
but the thing is that I was already partial to the trombone, and I like the trombone. I guess I was playing already a little bit. I was playing trombone in school, and I was playing, and I like Willie Colon. But when I heard J.J. Johnson, I was like, whoa, wow! I was like, ooh, and I tried to play like J.J. Johnson. I said, no, man, wait a minute. It was like I hit like a big wall. It was like, bro, you want to play like that? You got to study. You got to get extremely serious. You know.
I think with the whole idea of what motivated you to fuse jazz with the Puerto Rican folkloric music. Can you talk a little bit about that? How did that come about?
Well, don't forget that throughout my whole life, or my whole, with my parents and my family life, I was exposed to our culture, So from a young age, I'm listening to Jíbaro music, and I'm the cuatro and los trovadores and all that. Then I became a fan of Latin music, the dance music of those days, Joe Cuba and all that stuff. And then of course I saw Willie Colon. So already in my DNA, my culture is like a big thing to me, So by 1980, 81, I moved. I actually went to I went to Puerto Rico to do a concert with Batacumbele, but I didn't realize that they had sent me a one-way ticket. I didn't realize that. So I got to Puerto Rico and said, bro, where's my ticket to come back? I said, no, don't worry about it. They wanted me to stay in Puerto Rico. But I actually had rehearsed with Batacumbele from the gate, because I was by then, by 1989, I was part of Luis Perico Ortiz's first band. And in that band was Cacheta Maldonado, Eric Figueroa, Eddie Wawa. And I remember rehearsing with them in Eric's house, whom Eric today is my brother-in-law. But the thing is that in Puerto Rico, when I went to Puerto Rico, as it turns out, I mean, I went there just to just to do the gig and just come back, But as it turns out, I met my wife, Adelina. And the rest is history. I stayed with Batacumbele. We recorded the first record and like that. But during my time in Puerto Rico, playing in the different towns, I got to see, la familia Cepeda, los Ayala. I was exposed. I always credit, live music is something very powerful. You see it in person, you go like, whoa, So don't forget, by this time, I was already a founding member in New York of Jerry Gonzalez Ford Apache Band, from the original and Libre and Conjunto Libre, here. So my beginnings in New York were like Chocolate, Larry Harlow, then Hector Lavoe, and then I went to Conjunto Libre, Manio Kendo, which is Manio Kendo's Libre now, But Libre was an experimental band, So I'm already like my foundation as an explorer, or being part of explorations, because Libre was a pretty, well, the name says it, Libre, There was a lot of improvisation, a lot of riffing and stuff, and a lot of solos, and like that. And then Fort Apache was basically that, but a little further out there. Now we're going. Now we're, Jerry. Jerry's. I guess his direction was, it was an experimental band. As a rumba jam it was a whole. So now my mind, for some reason, after that I became, I was always part of some kind of experiments. Batacumbele, boom, another experiment. You know what I'm saying? Right. So now when Batacumbele, you know, we everybody part of, you know, with their own ways. You know, I was like, by then I was already hearing, I was like hearing something, and then being influenced by visiting you know, the different towns of Puerto Rico and alternating with those folkloric bands that influenced me. It said, boom, man, you know, we're doing all this other musical experimentation with all this other musical stuff. You know what I kind of like that, and I'm talking to you about 1980, 81, 81, 82, 83. It's like, man, there's something, and in my mind I was like, there was something. I was like, I was restless. There was something that was percolating in my mind. I was like, oh man, why don't you do a whole bomba and plena thing, you know? Or, you know, we're doing it with Jerry, with the Afro-Cuban stuff and this and that, or whatever, and Batacumbele, and Batacumbele also, you know, was like they touched the subject of Jibaro jazz a little bit. It's all like, I guess it's all it's in the air. It was in the air, you know. And I was there at the right moment, and I had the right players, because you could have the idea, but if you don't got the right players to back you up, you know, it's like nothing is going to happen. And I'm extremely grateful to people like Jose Gamay on the bass player, Hector Veneros. The first gig that I did in Puerto Rico, and the name of my first band was called Papo Vazquez Bomba Jazz, and the first gig was at the place in Old San Juan on a St. Valentine's Day, and the band was Hector Venero on saxophone, Luis Quevedo on piano, Jose Gasmey on bass, Jimmy Rivera on drums, Giovanni Hidalgo on percussion, Anthony Carrillo on percussion, and Chichito Cepeda, who was actually the el tambor mayor of the family Cepeda. And how I was able to get Chichito involved in my first experimental band, because my bands, you know, these are experiments. Like what you're hearing now, like this latest record, Chapter 10, Breaking Cover, what you're hearing is like years of experimentation, years of trying to figure out how to make this thing work. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not just getting, you know, somebody to come and play bomba and you're gonna play jazz too. Now you got to try to find a way for it to sound right, to feel right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But getting back to Chichito, mm-hmm. he was working. What we were rehearsing upstairs, and Chichito Cepeda, who was the tambor mayor de la familia Cepeda, he used to work below the place in the jewelry shop. So he heard the music upstairs, and he came upstairs. And of course, Anthony Carrillo grew up with La Familia Cepeda, and we invited Chichito. But the purpose of that band was to fuse our Puerto Rican culture with jazz, or I felt like there was a need to create, you know, to amplify the what's known as a Latin jazz repertoire. So that was the beginning of my first band, which was called Papo Vazquez Bomba Jazz in 1984.
Wow.
I hope that
what a history, right?
Right. I mean, and don't forget, you know, this comes in the heels of, like, you know, this is right after, like, you know, from 1975 to 1980, I had recorded with the Fania All Stars. I already had recorded with Celia Cruz. Matter of fact, I had to, what I did today, I said, you know, you better I want to get something here. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I really do this, but plus you can check this out on my website. But, you know, like, before that, I already have recorded with Mon Rivera, Hector Lavoe, Willie Colon, the Fania All Stars, you know,
Papo.
Sly Hampton. As a matter of fact, that was also a major influence in who I am as a musician. I also had the opportunity, and I was extremely lucky enough to have Sly Hampton invited to become part of the world of trombones and record on that record. And then that record was on my right was and I will always have to give credit to Steve Teray, who sent me as a sub. He sent me as a sub, and then all of a sudden Sly said, "You know what? I want you to become part of that band." And I have to give credit to Slide for fine tuning my understanding of how you play this instrument.
Right.
And but the thing is that before, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, before you go any further, we got to take a small break, and then we'll come back and continue this great conversation. Sabes que, did you know? Well, we're back, Papo, and let's continue on that great conversation and a little bit of that history of your career.
The bottom line was that by the time that I got to Puerto Rico, I already had recorded and played with, or traveled the world with Ray Charles I already had, I was extremely lucky, very fortunate to have so I was already, I was already, I had done a whole bunch of stuff,
All different influences in your head, right?
Right.
This is something I've been wanting to ask you, and that is, how did you come up with the name of the Mighty Pirates for your band?
The Mighty Pirates Troubadours.
Right.
Well, it actually was originally we were called the Pirates Troubadours. And that was Mike Viñas. Mike Viñas was the bass player for Ruben Blades, because I was also part of with Ruben Blades and traveled the world with Ruben, and we were I already had recorded my first record, which was called Breakout. I think this says 1992, 92, 91, 92. And we were on the road. I was on the road. We were on the road with Ruben Blades. And I remember one time I went to visit Mario Rivera. And he had company, and he introduced me to them, and the gentleman said, "Oh yeah, you're Papo Vazquez. You're Mr. Bomba Jazz." See, because I was still using the name of Papo Vazquez Bomba Jazz after I recorded my first record, and I wasn't happy with that, because I felt like I was being pigeonholed. You're putting me in a corner, and I want to be free to play and record whatever I want. So I had mentioned that to Mike Viñas. We were on the road. I think we were in Chicago, but it's hard to remember. The thing is that I mentioned that to Mike Viñas, and he says, "Well, and I know he said it joking around. He said, "Well, Papo, well, you don't." I said, "Yeah, Mike, I gotta change. I gotta get a new name for my band." He said, "Well," he said it jokingly, "What you don't understand is that you're a pirate troubadour." I went like, "A pirate troubadour? What's that?" I said, "Man, that is the coolest thing I ever heard. A pirate troubadour." So the rest is history. Now, years later, Willie Williams, who was a member for many years, he said to me, "Papo, we should change it to the Mighty Pirates Troubadours." And I think he was refereeing. There was a famous gang in North Philly where I used to live, where I grew up. I think the Mighty whatever. It was the Mighty MFs. So he said, you should call it the Mighty Pirates Troubadours. I said, I like that too. Let's do that. So that's how it evolved to become the Mighty Pirates.
Well, Papo, I want to talk a little bit about your current recording, but before we do that, let's see if we can bring up one of the tunes on your album, and it's titled Fairmount Park. Am I correct? Let's see if we can get that up on the screen. Great sound, Papo. Papo, there's a couple of things that I really want to make sure that I get into this interview with you, and that is a couple of things that I think are important. First of all, you've been playing for 45 years. How do you keep your chops up?
Well, I would say, okay, not you just immersed me in a whole different direction. Okay, all right. Let me see here.
Right.
I just gave
Well,
give a master class to the conservatory to the jazz department of the Conservatory of Puerto Rico the other day, and I was telling those guys that this might sound funny, but the most important thing that one of the most important things that I find is you got to try to keep your instrument clean. Clean your instrument. Every day you clean your instrument, with soap and water, and that to me is like one of the most important things. That's like number one. And then the next thing that at the top of the list of things that to do to keep your chops up is you gotta have a good warm up. You gotta have a good warm up routine. And that consists of doing long tones. You start with long tones, uh, and sometimes it takes me like 1 or 2, 3 hours to warm up. I remember having or talking to Slide Hampton about his warm up routine, he used to say, yeah, well, I get up early in the morning. It's at 8 o'clock in the morning. I start warming up. If I have a gig at night, I would start warming up early in the morning. But and what he meant, because I during the time that I was in his band, I remember going to his house, and we would like spend like hours just playing long notes, at a very very low volume, and once you start real low from low register from the low register, you can keep them going higher and higher, 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 higher until and then of course you do. It's important for you to take a break. When you get tired, you stop. You gotta stop. You stop. You stop. Don't get you can't get used to practicing being tired. This is and then after you do the long tones, I would do what's called flexibility exercises. Then after that, so now we're talking about 2 hours already. Then I would, this is like the perfect scenario. Then I would so my whole practice was routine, especially when when I'm gonna have a concert, coming up, I would probably spend the whole day practicing, but it's like little spurts, like half an hour here, half an hour there. But then at the end of the day, you practice like 3 or 4 hours. But it's like you gotta be very careful not to hurt yourself.
wow.
But yeah, you gotta and of course, the older you get, the lazier you get, and then sometimes, sometimes 2 or 3 days go by, and then I go, oh man, my chest feel horrible. 1 week goes by, oh, I haven't practiced, and I mean, I practice, but not as much as I should, and that happens. That also happens, especially when I'm writing. When I'm doing a lot of writing, then I gotta try to balance both things at the same time. Practicing and writing the music that I gotta write for a recording or for an arrangement that I'm doing for somebody or like that.
Well, the whole scenario about this combination of writing the music, the writing leads me right into this next question. When you're composing or arranging, what is your approach? Because I like to hear what's in a person's mind, and especially you, because you're blending jazz and you're blending your folkloric music together. What's in your mind at that time?
Well, what like uh, for instance, if I want to start writing the compositions for the new record, what that entails is a lot of research. Before I start writing music or I start writing, putting anything on paper, I do a lot of you gotta do research. You gotta do research. So that means listening to previous recordings that I've done with the band, and analyzing the different concepts and different compositions that I recorded before, and that. And when I say analyzing different compositions, that could mean, you know, the rhythmical concept of compositions, uh, the tonalities, the keys, or major, minor, dominant, all those is a whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Tempos and stuff, the different rhythms. So like I tend to like uh, and music is so vast, and our culture is so rich. You know, we got so much, you know, stuff to pull from, that, you know, this is I had millions of variations to this thing. Like for instance, on this new recording, chapter 10, Breaking Cover, uh, which actually feature. Let me see here. Let me give the gate. See who the guy you mentioned, the guys in the band here on this new recording. Ivan Renta on tenor saxophone, Rick Jemison on piano, Adel Robles on the bass, Alvesta Garnett, Carlos on the drums, Carlos Maldonado on percussion, Reinaldo de Jesus on percussion, and on this new recording, chapter 10, has invited guest Jose Mangua Jr., who we were band members with Hector Lavoe's band and Willie Colon's band, and Sherman Irby on by the way, Jose Mangua Jr. is vocals and percussion, and Sherman Irby, excuse me, is alto sax, and Desmond Douglas on one track, Antonio Caraballo on the Fairmount Park. He's the guitar player, he's my cousin, and Antoine Dry on the trumpet.
So what? Give me a little bit of the. This is number 10. Am I correct?
Oh, so what I was getting at to was that like on this record, the last time I recorded a mambo, I think it was on many records ago, because this is number 10, right? Exactly. That's chapter 10, right? Number 10, and so the last time I recorded like a Latin jazz mambo was on at the Point Volume 1 or Volume 2, which is a reverendo, or maybe, but it was a few records back. So in other words, it was like okay, it's time for me to do another mambo. You know what I'm saying? Right, on this record, because on previous records I was doing some other stuff, more planas and more bombas and more. I went into a whole Arabian thing on my Oasis project, you know, on my Oasis CD, and maybe some waltz and stuff, you know. So there's a lot of on this record. Actually, I finally was able to record with Aguinaldo. It's called Saludo Campesino, which actually Jose Manuel sings on it. And Saludo Campesino. Wow. Yeah. Me and Jose Manuel, we did duo.
So I guess it was sound a little bit more danceable. Some of the songs on there.
Yes. Well, actually, the Latin jazz, the New York Latin jazz mambo, I want us to see. You know, on this record, I said, I want to do something para el bailador, something that, and as it turns out, in Taiwan, this gentleman, he made a video of him dancing to the New York Latin jazz mambo. Was like, oh, look at this guy, he was killing it, man. Mm-hmm. Right.
This is kind of like important that maybe the folks here.
Now, check this out. But now, before we move on,
right?
The mighty Paris Troubadours, we have always orbited around our Afro-Puerto Rican or our Puerto Rican folklore. Follow?
Right.
But everything else, you know, like, but we're not limited just to that. But our orbit has always been that.
Right. So that maybe you want to explain parranda to the folks that don't know what parranda means.
A parranda is Christmas caroling, but Puerto Rican style.
So it's almost like you go to people's houses and
there you go.
Sing to them. And
well, according to my understanding, I might be wrong, but I think a parranda, well, in Puerto Rico, the ones that I grew up participating in, your parrandas, our style of parrandas are like this: Jesse, this Christmas we're gonna give you a parranda, meaning that you gotta be ready with food and drink and all that stuff because at any given moment during the Christmas season we're gonna show up at your house, and it's always during the evening, and you're not gonna know when we're gonna show up, and that's why it's called un asalto navideño. Asalto meaning we're gonna it's Christmas assault.
As a Christmas assault.
Yeah, an assault. We're gonna assault you, but with music, with your family members and your friends. But it's gonna be it's gonna be a surprise. You're not gonna know what day it is, but okay, Jesse, between the 15th and the 25th of December, we're gonna come to your house. We're gonna show up to your house. And I remember, I remember actually giving parrandas in Philadelphia in the snow. In the snow.
Wow.
In the snow with my dad and my grandfathers, and it was like 50 people falling all over the place because the snow and stuff, and from house to house, But in Puerto Rico, the traditional parrandas, the people that are inside the house, they're sleeping. So where everybody sneaks up to the front of the house, and all of a sudden, bam, the music breaks out. That's a parranda. And then we have a party. Then we go to your house and we have a party and we play music and sing and celebrate, being together.
That sounds like a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happens a whole lot now. I know when I was a kid, it did happen.
That's still part of our Puerto Rican culture. Mostly, I would say, mostly in los campos, in the countryside, and like they say, la montaña, in the mountains.
In the mountains, yeah. Is there any advice that you'd like to give to young, folks that are learning the trombone, that are upcoming trombone players? Are there any advice from either their musical or their career development?
Well, I would say not just to the trombone players, just to all people that aspire to become a musician and be part of this industry. The most important thing is to prepare yourself. And see me, I was extremely fortunate to have played with some of the great artists of this music. It's a long list, and I always say, search out your elders. They're the ones that'll teach you, they'll show you they'll direct you in the right direction. And prepare yourself. Always gotta prepare yourself and have patience. This is a long race. This is not like a short race. This, you know what I'm saying? And you got to prepare yourself. And yes, search your elders. They're the ones that have been through what you're gonna be going through.
Wow, fantastic, Papo. We could talk and talk and talk. Unfortunately, our time is getting very, very short. Hey, Papo, can you tell the folks where they can get your music?
Oh, they could visit my website, which is Papo Vazquez, PAPOVAZQUEZ.com, and all the information is there.
Fantastic. So I want to say to you that I'm really happy that you did this interview. There's a lot of things that you have said that probably enlighten a lot of the people that are trying to learn about the music, the culture, and in your case, it's about the fusion of folkloric music and jazz. So I want to thank you, Papo, for this wonderful history and this journey that you've taken us today. Thank you so much. And guess what? We may be talking again.
Sabes que?
Sabes que? Did you know?
Did you know? Thank you, Jesse.